Welcome in, listener. You're listening to a segment from the Slumpbuster podcast with Ju-Ju and Dre. Find the full episode on Spotify, iTunes, the Google Play Store, or our YouTube channel. Enjoy. Luke Kuechly, the all-pro linebacker for the Carolina Panthers, decided he's not going to be around to see the Matt Rule regime. Decided he's not going to be our all-decade defensive player for the Slumpbuster for the 2020s. He's gone. He's done. He called it a career after, I believe it was 8 seasons with the Carolina Panthers. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 5-time All-Pro. So that tells you the level of competitor that Luke Kuechly was. He led the league in tackles a couple years. You could tell he anchored that defense. And he said, I'm done. Age 28, done. This wasn't the first surprise retirement we've seen this year. Andrew Luck, obviously, was the more notable one when it happened in August. And then you go back to, not a lot of people were talking about it, but Talvin Smith, also a linebacker, surprise retirement. And this one's kind of a little near and dear for me as well, because obviously as a Niners fan, I was there to see Patrick Willis retire in his prime. And I was also there to see, so we drafted a guy named Chris Borland, who was supposed to be like the next big time linebacker. He had a phenomenal rookie season, and he called it a career after his first season with the Niners. And again, a great first season. Now, the obvious question is this going to be a trend? Is this just going to be something that we're going to see continue? Because that's what we asked everyone when we were going over the Andrew Luck topic. I think it just comes with the position, because if we're seeing all these star linebackers retire early, you can argue they may take more hits than even a running back, and running back has one of the shorter lifespans in an NFL career. What do you make of the Luke Kuechly retirement? Just any thoughts on Luke Kuechly, the player, the person?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one, as a person, right, everything I've seen and read, he's a fantastic human being, right, a really good guy just to be around, good guy in the locker room. I'm not too surprised, though. I think players are starting to become more cognizant and aware of, like, their personal health and starting to understand that I could make a few good millions just in a few seasons, and that's going to set me up basically for the rest of my life. And granted, you're not going to be as living nice and pretty as some of the really high-end MLB players or NBA players. But like, hey, if you make a few million, right, why continue to risk your body? And I know that he's had issues with concussions and other health issues. And I think a lot of more players are starting to become aware that, hey, if I really want to be around for my kids and my grandkids, I need to take care of my body. And sometimes that means walking away from the sport that I love at 28 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. I encourage everyone to play IDP in fantasy football, but it's going to be weird not being able to draft Luke Kuechly in the 8th round like we've done for years. Guy was a stud. He was a phenomenal player to watch. I'm glad I got to see him play. Again, like we literally named this guy our all-decade player just a couple weeks ago. So to see him make this retirement announcement, it definitely comes as a shock. But a shock to us because he's leaving, but not a shock when you really sit back and analyze, hey, there's a new coaching regime coming in. They just let go Ron Rivera, who was his coach from the time he was drafted. David Tepper's coming in. He wants to make some big time changes. This Panthers team might be in rebuild for a couple years. And like you said, his body was deteriorating. So it's like, how many years do I have left? Do I really want to spend this on a team that could potentially be drafting in the top 10 for the next 2 years at minimum? So It's unsurprising that he made this move, but I certainly wish him the best in whatever endeavor he takes on from this point forward. Luke Kuechly, you're a baller, man. It was a pleasure seeing you. All right. Next headline coming in from the NFL. So the Browns officially have named their newest head coach, which seems like their 10th in the last 5 years. And, well, it's actually Baker Mayfield. Think about this. He's seen 4 head coaches already. He's been in the league 2 years. Oh, my God. The Browns are a dumpster fire, but Kevin Stefanski, he said, I'm all for it. I'm on board. I am going to meet with Jimmy Haslam in his office every week to discuss the playbook. I'm going to sit with all these analytic guys, and we're going to come up with a game plan. This was after his team totaled a paltry 80-something yards against the Niners defense the previous week. I don't want to hold that game against Kevin Stefanski as a whole. Analytic guys, they've mentioned before, they hate small sample sizes, so it makes sense that they weren't going to hold that game against him. But considering that the Browns did interview Robert Saleh, who was the defensive coordinator in that game, when you look at just that comparison, I remember there was a point at halftime where Robert Saleh left the locker room with a phone in his hand and was taking a phone call. And people were thinking, did he just accept the Browns job right after this first half against the Vikings? It was possible. I don't know if he was getting told over the phone, like, hey, guy, you didn't get it. We're looking at Kirk Cousins just had this amazing performance against your defense. So clearly we have to hire Kevin Stefanski, right?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that is something to Kevin Stefanski, right? Is the fact that he was able to take Kirk Cousins from being this perennial can't beat middle of the pack teams to good teams, right? Is that was always the knock on Kirk Cousins is, hey, he's overpaid and can't get over the hump of beating the really good teams. And this year, like, they had a pretty decent run. They were able to beat the Saints in the, at the Saints home. And so maybe that's sort of what did it. And that one game was sort of just the outlier. And they said, hey, that doesn't really matter. I think it's a fine hire. I'm not really like ecstatic for him. Like, it doesn't excite me, but at the same time, I'm like, it's not an awful hire.
Well, I mean, you could tell that that's who they wanted to hire the previous year. So he came in second to Freddie Kitchens when they did their job search the previous season. Mm-hmm. And now Dee Podesta is the person who's taking the majority of the control in this situation. It's weird. So Dee Podesta, he doesn't even live in Cleveland. He apparently just flies in weekly, and he's supposed to meet with Kevin Stefanski. I just don't agree with a lot of the exterior stuff I'm hearing from this hiring, such as, again, why does he have to meet with Jimmy Haslam each week? Like, is that a normal procedure for the owner to meet with the head coach and discuss game plan, and for him to have to submit the game plan to the analytics department on a weekly basis? It just sounds kind of gross. And
yeah,
it's something's off about this situation. If it works, it works. But why should I believe that the Cleveland Browns are going to be this new innovative team that are going to infuse analytics and suddenly become a world beater when over the last 5-10 years, basically our entire existence of being on this earth, they've been bad. They've been perennially bad, and they have shown no evidence to allow me to give them the benefit of the doubt. And when I start hearing these weird headlines or these weird contractual stipulations, it makes sense why a guy like Josh McDaniels basically told them to go fuck off.
No, and you're exactly right. If I'm a head coach, right, and I've been a coach at the highest level, right, so even a coordinator or a specials team coach or whatever, like, why is the owner having to meet with me to discuss game plan? Like, does the owner think that they know more than me, right? And we could tell that was sort of the case with Jerry Jones and, Jason Garrett, right? Jerry Jones is very confident and he thinks he knows football very well, which he's done a great job building that team. But so if I'm the head coach, I'd be like, why am I having to meet with you as the owner? And you haven't had a good team. So to your point, Ju-Ju, they've been bad. So why should I have to justify anything that I do when your team has been the bad team? It's not necessarily my team that's been bad. It's been yours. And now I have to meet with you to justify all of my moves?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, at least with Jerry, you can say Jerry has been on teams that have won Super Bowls. Mm-hmm. Jerry has put together a pretty damn dynamic and talented roster for the Cowboys that if it wasn't for this mediocre season we just saw unfold, we were projecting that team as a potential Super Bowl team, at least a playoff team. With the Browns, it's like, what are they? What is this team? From a game plan perspective, I don't hate it because Kevin Stefanski, basically his offense is an offshoot of what Kyle Shanahan, the Niners are doing. The Shanahan family's brought over that West Coast, play action, run the ball. And I mean, the Browns certainly have a good roster to do that. Let's face it, they have players like Nick Chubb there. They have Kareem Hunt, at least for now. And you would think that Baker Mayfield might succeed in an offense that gets him outside the pocket and use at least some athleticism, play action to throw off the defense. He's accurate enough to make those passes. At least I think his completion percentage this last season doesn't really dictate that, but I'm just going to throw this last season just out the books. I'm just going to say Freddie Kitchens, that was the problem, and give Baker Mayfield, give Odell Beckham, give those players at least my benefit of the doubt, give my blessing. Kevin Stefanski, I don't know how sold I can be on him because, okay, remember this. We were throwing Kirk Cousins under the bus earlier this season because that Vikings offense didn't really look like it was all together. Well, Kevin Stefanski was part of that Vikings off. Why wasn't it working when you have pieces like Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Kirk Cousins? I mean, this was before Thielen got hurt with the hamstring. So clearly there was problems going on before during the season, not just this last playoff game.
Yeah, but maybe there's something to be said that he was able to fix it, though, and piece it back together, right? And maybe it took scrutiny from the media, but he was able to sort of correct the path, right, and get everything back on track.
Well, but it does seem like what fixed their offense was, hey, Dalvin Cook, we're going to use you. In fact, we're going to use you a lot. We're going to run the ball down the other team's throat, and Kirk Cousins, you're going to throw some play action like rollouts. And I think that sounds like more something that Mike Zimmer would say than Kevin Stefanski, who's supposed to be this hotshot offensive coach, right? Doesn't the run the ball sound like something a defensive-minded head coach like Mike Zimmer probably threw out there more so than someone who's trying to make their name and get their next head coaching job off of being a hotshot offensive coordinator who likes to throw the ball around? Because let's face it, that's what's getting the head coaching jobs these days in the NFL.
Yeah, I think there is something like we're starting to see like the Pat Mahomes, right, and the Lamar Jacksons, and that stuff is exciting. It's a good brand of football. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too thrilled with this signing. Like I said, I'm not over ecstatic for it. I think it's just a fine signing. It's very much a Browns signing, right? Like it's not amazing. It's not super, super bad. I think it'll work out a lot better for Baker Mayfield. But I think this will be when the jury's sort of out on Baker, right? If he cannot succeed with this system and Odell Beckham can't succeed right now after this season, I think they've got to start to move on.
I think if you're the Browns, which you should have been best served doing, if you're Jimmy Haslam, just clear everyone out. The analytics guys, the old guard of head coaching, just everyone needs to go. I don't know why they kept everyone from the analytics department, this shady D. Podesta character who just shows up when things are going wrong for the Browns. I don't know. It just sounds dumpster fire.